welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. My name is Omar Pinto, the host of the Share Podcast and a founding member of the SRC, the Share Recovery Community. In the SRC, we have a number of live online recovery meetings every week on a number of different topics. This podcast is only one example of the content provided to our members. In this meeting, a chapter of the Tao Te Ching is discussed every week as to how it relates to recovery. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast episode.
Hello, everyone. Buddy C. Welcome to the April 9th, 2020 Tao Te Ching meeting for the Share Recovery Community. We have Kate and Kirsty and Tina and Marla and Rob and Todd and Derek and Craig and Paul so far. Good to see everyone. Hope all is doing well. We will be talking about the 76th chapter today, about bending and yielding and being flexible and all that stuff that I don't want to do. The 76th chapter. You going to read for us, Kate?
All right. First translation. A man is born gentle and weak. At his death he is hard and stiff. Green plants are tender and filled with sap. At their death they are withered and dry. Therefore the stiff and unbending is the disciple of death. The gentle and yielding is the disciple of life. Thus an army without flexibility never wins a battle. A tree that is unbending is easily broken. The hard and strong will fall. The soft and weak will overcome. Second translation. Men are born soft and supple. Dead they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant. Dead they are brittle and dry. Thus whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. The hard and stiff will be broken. The soft and supple will prevail. Third translation. The living are soft and yielding. The dead are rigid and stiff. Living plants are flexible and tender. The dead are brittle and dry. Those who are stiff and rigid are the disciples of death. Those who are soft and yielding are the disciples of life. The rigid and stiff will be broken. The soft and yielding will overcome. Final translation. A baby's body is soft and gentle. A corpse is hard and stiff. Plants and trees are tender and full of sap. Dead leaves are brittle and dry. If you are rigid and unyielding, you might as well be dead. If you are soft and flexible, you are truly alive. Soldiers trained to fight to the death will die. A tree that cannot bend with the wind will snap. Here's a useful saying. The harder they come, the harder they fall. Here's another. The meek shall inherit the earth.
Comments?
Imagine if we were inflexible at a time like this. Imagine if humans were inflexible and we could not adapt to this situation that we're in. It would be certain death. So this chapter makes perfect sense at this moment.
But aren't some people going kicking and screaming though?
Certain death.
They might be bending outside, but they're not bending inside.
And what does that do? I mean, it just makes you more miserable if you're inflexible. I know people like this who they're steadfast in their opinions. They seem to me the most unhappy people.
Yes. Craig?
Yeah, just on what Marla was saying. We need to be like this. More particularly when we come into, if we look at the specifics as to why we're here, we're focusing on recovery. We need to be flexible when we come into recovery because we cannot We cannot change with the same attitude that got us into this fix in the first place. We have to be able to be open and receptive to things changing and have to accept the fact that things are going to be different. I can't stop drinking if I'm keeping drinking. The same behaviours and the same attitudes are going to actually keep me away from making myself better. And I think in the current situation that we are in, I've just received notification from my job that I'm going to be here for the next 9 weeks. I'm off until the end of May now, so I'm now going to need to be flexible in my attitudes towards what's going on in my household, and that's going to mean a lot of love, a lot of patience, a lot of tolerance on my behalf, and accepting the fact that other people are going through things at the same time as what I'm going through. How they handle it may be different to how I handle it, but I just need to make sure my side of the street's clean, and I have to adapt to the needs of the other people in the household as well at the moment. Just as they've adapted to the way that I behave when I came into recovery, because when I came into recovery, I was volatile. I wasn't receptive to changing. I thought everything else had to change, not me. Why should I have to change? It's everybody else. So I think it's definitely a good chapter for where we're actually at the moment.
For anyone listening that's not listening at this moment, we're in the middle of the corona pandemic. So that's what everyone's referring to. All things, including the grass and trees, are soft and pliable in life, dry and brittle in death. Then Starr's this is Jonathan Starr, his last stanza. The hard and strong are defeated while the soft and gentle triumph. And where he talks about the soft or the meek, which the last translation had, the tender, the soft, the pliant, the yielding, the humble, the gentle. That's all the words that could describe that attitude. Yeah, this is going to be a while because at this recording, it's 1st of April 9th. We're around at least another couple of months, Craig, for sure. So this is something we just got to be flexible with. And really this flexibility, though, really is about everything in life, though, isn't it? The more flexible I am about everything, the more I really succeed. Comments?
I think the more flexible I'm going to be, the more I'm actually going to get out of this.
Yeah.
I think looking at things from a not from a victim mindset. I'm looking at this not as an isolation. I'm looking at this as enforced solitude. I'm kind of hoping the world's going to be a much better place by the time we come out of this. There was an article in the news the other day to say that you can actually see the Himalayas in India for the first time in years because pollution's came down to such a good level.
Kirsty?
I think there's two kind of aspects to this. There's the recovery side and there's also the societal side. Our issues stem from unbendable opinions and points of view that has developed right from the beginning of time. One of the things that, certainly in relation to the pandemic, is as we are all facing this together, it would be nice to think that coming out of it, there would be an appreciation for those that were different, those who once we would be scared of, those who once we would have a resentment against. There's stories of gangland violence being put on hold in parts of America so that people can come together as a community and fight the pandemic. If we are stoic and unbendable in our opinions and in our thoughts, there is no opportunity for anybody to grow. And that is really kind of which leads me on to recovery. If we see one person who does something a certain way, then that's great. And we learn and we take what we want from them. We take what works for us. But it's a bit like a preacher speaking to his congregation. It might fit 98% of them, but 2% might actually think very differently. And one thing the SRC has shown me is that there isn't just one way to recovery. There's lots of different ways. And what works for one person may not work for everyone. Things like communication, communicating to one person can be very different to communicating to another person because you get to know people. And it's this, I guess it's I nearly term I know to use is kind of this emotional intelligence that we have as human beings in order to show up differently with different people. And I've had to use that in recovery with different people. If I keep banging the same drum, saying, you only do it this way, you only do it this way, you only do it this way, then eventually that gets lost. I get isolated. If I isolate, I dry up and I die because I'll relapse. In being flexible, you give yourself the chance to learn new things. You don't know everything. You learn new things, you grow. Just taking on, you stop being flexible, you dry up and you die.
Thanks, Kirsty. I was thinking about how we could apply this. This is the Tao of Inner Peace, Diane Dreyer. This is page 9 in her book. The most devastating experience many people face is being fired or laid off. A non-Tao person is often destroyed, unable to move forward, to overcome the shame and confusion. Many have fallen into severe depression, have even committed suicide. The man or woman of the Tao sees crisis as an opportunity. Like the bamboo, Tao people bend and grow, adjusting to the winds of change. They look within, take stock of their lives, and set new goals. I was thinking about how we could apply this, and a way that I can be soft and yielding would be to be open-minded when someone disagrees with me, trying to understand their position instead of being frozen in mine. That can apply to so many things. Also, Zachy and I talked about this a while back and have a note from that conversation. Flexibility is lowering my resistance. So how can I be flexible in a situation rather than rigid? Well, acceptance is a big part of that. Because, when you think about it, and this would also apply to to any relationship or situation in life, if it's rigid and just inflexible and there's no life in it, that's a sign for me that it may be something that's died, a season's over, and it's time to move on. That I can identify things that are dead because they're unyielding. And that could be with my opinions about something. I could have a dead opinion about something that I need to revisit and say, okay, this needs to change because, this is causing me angst. I'm disturbed when this happens, and I need to, I've got to learn how to be flexible in this situation. So all of that's what came to mind for me. Any comments? This comment on the Hogan translation, the meek shall inherit the earth. I pulled out my Sermon on the Mount, Emmett Fox, and he's got a couple of good things on that I want to share with y'all. I'm going to share the screen. I just took a couple of excerpts, pages 27 or so is where I'm starting. Earth means the whole of your outer experience. And to inherit the earth means to have dominion over that outer experience. That is to say, to have power to bring your conditions of life into harmony and true success. So talking about flexibility there, he's talking about everything about your life. He talks about meek and what meek means, and I thought this was pretty good. The true significance of the word meek in the Bible is a mental attitude for which there is no other single word available. And it is this mental attitude which is the secret of prosperity or success in prayer. It is a combination of open-mindedness, faith in God, and the realization that the will of God for us is always something joyous and interesting and vital, and much better than anything we could think of for ourselves. This state of mind also includes a perfect willingness to allow this will of God to come about in whatever way divine wisdom considers to be best, rather than in some particular way that we have chosen for ourselves. This mental attitude, complex in analysis but simple in itself, is the key to dominion or success in demonstration. There is no one word for it in common speech because the thing does not exist except for those who are upon a spiritual basis. So I thought that was pretty good. If we desire to inherit the earth, we must absolutely acquire this meekness. Comments before we go to Derek Lynn?
Go ahead,
Marla.
No, I just wondered what the definition of meek was in the dictionary. When I hear meek, because that reading you just read,
quiet. It's quiet, gentle, and easily imposed on. Submissive.
Yeah, and this
surrender.
Is my point. So submissive to me means it's not necessarily weak, but there is an inflexibility in my mind within that context. I know we say we're powerless over certain things, but we still have a certain element of power. And what meek says to me is that we are powerless and we are submissive. And I know from a religious point of view, then that's exactly what, was written there. But in terms of the Tao and the way that it's written here, for me, it refers more to, it kind of speaks to me anyway, from an agnostic's perspective, more as humility and willingness, yes, humility and open-mindedness, which does, translate in a way to what you read out. But there was a sense, for me personally, there was an almost a sense of, this is how it is, there's no other definition, and therefore this is kind of what it means. And for me personally, that's not the case. That's just my take.
I saw meekness as the flexibility that this chapter is talking about. Paul?
Yeah, I think a lot of people confuse meekness with weakness.
Yeah.
And it's not that. It's in my mind, it's being willing to be open, to take in different points of view, and not to impose my will upon others. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's why that Emmett Fox's approach to that really spoke to me, because it really is about me opening my heart. First of all, I start to value your opinion, because in the past I didn't value your opinion because it wasn't my opinion. So it wasn't important. Okay, that's the first thing, that we have to start loving and honoring people by listening to them. And that was one of the big things that changed for me in recovery, that I realized I did not have all of the answers, that I had to be open-minded, because I just realized I didn't know everything as I used to think. That's part of that powerlessness and that meekness that I've been learning through recovery. Rob?
Yeah, kind of debate going here, but oh well. I was raised very, 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 very conservative, strict religious background. My dad was a brother and pastor. And if I can apply what I've been learning to what I experienced, and I'll have to admit, I had to step for a lot of that baggage and anger from my upbringing. Where I'm standing now on a recovery path and taking yet another Tao principle, if everything stems from either fear or love, when an individual is so moved in a position, or I should say solid and stanced in a position that the vein is popping out of their neck as they're engaging, which happened, not my father, my dad's cool, but people in that upbringing, or anybody, if somebody's jugular over a position, by definition, that is not love. And so if I can apply some of the things I'm learning, a person who is so rigid to the point where they're willing to get angry, if I can work backwards and do an algebraic equation on recovery, they're probably standing rigid in their position because at the root of it, they're afraid of something. And maybe in that situation, their particular little view of how things are, as defined by them and 50 other people on the planet, if that isn't true to them, they're going to go to hell. Okay, sorry for those people that don't want to talk religion, but they're going to go to hell. And that's a large motivator. If you think that if you don't do this way, baptize forward, baptize backwards, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you believe this political view, that political view, if you're so jugular over it and so solid in your stance that you've got veins popping out of your neck, that means that you're afraid, morbidly afraid of something. So it helps me when I encounter these people or I review these situations that happened when I was growing up. I can now look at it and go, well, this inflexible person was actually ravaged by fear of death. And they're not living. And anything that they're saying or anything they're reading from whatever text or wherever they get their guidance, it's not real. Because if it were real, they would have joy and peace and love and all of these other things. So to me, this is all part of this spiritual thing that I'm still trying to figure out. But now I can have compassion for these people. I was at the store the other day, and it was early in the situation, and there was an elderly lady who had the family over on Sunday, and she makes potatoes on Sunday, every Sunday, for the last 58 years. And she was having a meltdown at age 80. She was having a meltdown in a public grocery store because, and if we do the algebraic equation, probably because she was afraid of letting down her family. And she was afraid of failing, and her self-image was based on this meal that she prepares every Sunday. Regardless of, we got a pandemic, there are no potatoes. Now there are, but at this point there were none. We bought all the potatoes and toilet paper. I don't get that, but anyway, they've got enough for 58 years. But now I can look at people and I can go, or myself, if I'm getting old, I can go, I'm in fear. Okay, let's work backwards. What am I afraid of? Right? And what's the worst thing that can happen? I could die. I mean, really, at the end of it. And I'm okay with that. So anyway, I'm rambling. That's what I got.
Thanks, Rob. You're exactly right, I think. Craig.
Yeah, so just my take on the meekness. If I wasn't meek when I came into recovery, then I wouldn't have been willing to learn. I think that, my level of meekness, I think it depends on my level of surrender. If I'm not being meek, then I'm still resisting something. I'm still trying to control stuff that's going on. To me, that's not being meek. That's just being stubborn stubborn and unreceptive and not very open-minded to the way things need to go.
Could have a lot to do with the yielding as well. I relate the yielding to that first 3 steps, turning my will and my life over to the care of God, and not being powerless and thinking I have this thing figured out, being the director rather than the observer, all those things we talk about. Kate?
Yes, along those lines, I struggle with thinking that I have control of everything. I think I control my life and I'm the one in charge of everything. And obviously I'm not the one in charge of everything. But I tend to think my way is right and I'm in charge. And then I find out I'm not, and then I'm upset. And so I think meekness for me is it's like kind of what we were talking about earlier, the acceptance of the fact that I'm not the one that has the power. Mm-hmm. And I need to remind myself of that pretty regularly, because I'll slip back into thinking I'm in control of this. I control my life. I make all the decisions. It's me. Rather than remembering that, no, it's not me. I'm not the one with the power.
It's kind of like that beginner's mind, isn't it? Where we, where we're open-minded and we're willing to change, or we're looking to change anyway, and we're seeking an answer instead of thinking that we have the answer.
Right. But it's hard because I think I slip back into that sometimes, that, no, I have the answer. I'm the one. I'm smarter than this. And it's actually, I don't have the answer. I'm not the one with the power. Wait a minute. Stop.
And, it's funny, though, Kate, if you do what I do, when I do that, I'll cut myself slack. I'll judge myself according to my motive and other people according to their actions, right? I'll judge me oh, well, I meant this. Oh, I didn't know that. So but somebody else do the very same thing. And, man, I'm all over them, That's good. We can even, things that we have some knowledge about, we can even have this beginner's mind with those things, that flexibility. Even things that we think we know the answer, we can still be open-minded about. Just because we believe we have the answer doesn't mean that we can't be flexible and unbending. At the very least, we can be polite enough to listen to some other point of view. And this happens for me all the time in a meeting. When I hear the person, I hear someone that, how can I say it? I just got to say it. That I think doesn't know as much as I know. And I hear what I need to hear, and I get the answer from them. And I'm shaking my head. I'm like, how did that happen? They know my answer. They shouldn't get my answer. Someone that knows a lot more than me should get the answer and tell me what, not the guy with 3 weeks that came in, mumbling about something, That's who I hear the answer from. It's crazy how that works. But, if I'm not flexible, I'm not going to hear the answer because I won't be listening to that person. I'll discount them because I don't think they should know, all those pride and ego things, those blocks that I put up, If I start doing that, you can forget it. The answer is not to be found, ever. That's good, Kate. Thank you.
It's worse when they tell you things that you don't want to hear.
Yeah, I make sure when I'm in a meeting, I never get up and get coffee when it's someone that I dislike or that I don't think knows what they're talking about. I always listen to them. Because that's who I always hear the answers from. I see Kurt laughing.
Been there, done that for sure. On the meek, I do like Kirsty. I like definitions for sure. I like this one: enduring injury with patience and without resentment. I had the living shit kicked out of me when I walked in the rooms. But there was no flexibility. There was no, I was still trying to control everything. I thinking I know best. I still think I know best sometimes. And so I have to remind myself every day, the more flexibility, the more openness I can bring into my life. It doesn't necessarily change what's going on in this world right now, but there's some sort of peace that I can get to. And my life is just better that way. But this
changes you though, Kurt, right?
What? Say what?
It changes you.
Yeah, it changes me.
That's the whole point.
And it's a better way to live.
Yeah.
But tomorrow morning I will wake up and I will try to control something. And then I'll remind myself, it's just one of those things. But it seems like I get a little more peace as the more I work, the more I stay in the program and work the steps and try to live a different way. It was a lifetime of taught how to control things, with my family. My parents still do it to this day. And it made me think about what recently, some of the readings I've done. It's like, what would have happened? Where would I be now if I would have let go? Mm-hmm. Would I have a completely different life? And that's fine. I mean, I am where I am for a reason, but how much suffering did I cause in my life too? How much suffering did I cause in other people's lives because I think things should be different than they are? And it just really got me thinking lately a lot about that and where I still am lacking surrender, true surrender. I could say it all day long, but yeah, man, I'm work. It's work in progress, and I'm liking what's coming out of it. But anyway, that's what I have.
Thanks, Kurt. I always know if there's an area that I'm not being flexible, I'm not surrendering. What am I getting angry about? What's disturbing me in some way? If it's disturbing me, there's something I am not surrendering, period. I mean, without exception, if I'm disturbed, then there's something there. Because, I can dislike something without being disturbed. It's not that I have to like everything. But if I'm trying to control, and I know the difference, I know the difference when that happens. I said, whoa, wait a minute. Where's this coming from? Like Rob was talking about, what am I afraid of? Because that's the real question if I want to get down to what's happening. So, Tina, you have something?
Yes. So many awesome things have already been said that it's just been a really good meeting. One thing that came to my mind was when we talk about letting go, and I believe, I know for me there are times when I've learned something from my toddler. When I'm trying to force him to do something a certain way when he was little, and then he shows me something different, and I thought, oh my goodness, that is a better way. And here I am being like, no, let mommy show you. And then I'm like, oh, I see what he's doing. That's actually better. Perfect example of when I've tried to force my will. But then I also think about the times now when they're older, and I think, no, I for sure know to not do this and to not drink or to not do edibles or, but then I think what if you are completely 100% right, but yet you're imposing your will? If I'm imposing my will on them, it's like preventing someone from hitting their bottom or letting them learn their own lesson. And sometimes I have to remind myself when I say I know for one thing, I have a higher power and I'm not her. And I need to let that go because that's the course of their life. And unfortunately, I have to stand back and watch the pain a little. I can't prevent their pain because that's their journey and that's how I had to learn. So I have to look at that and relate it to other people and other situations when I think, okay, I can't control that for a reason. This is supposed to unfold this way, and I have to find the peace within myself. And that helps me relate it to other people.
Thanks, Tina. This is a quote from Derek Lynn. I'm just going to read a little bit of his. That which is forceful and aggressive may seem to have the upper hand, but in fact occupies a lower position of disadvantage. Conversely, being yielding and flexible may be perceived as a weakness, is in fact a great strength that occupies a higher position, leading to victory and success. If we apply pressure to others in an attempt to make them do what we want, we will end up with resentment and alienation. How about Wayne Dyer? Marla, anything in Wayne Dyer that you like today?
Living by bending. The thing I love most about studying the Tao Te Ching is its impeccable adherence to finding the great way by closely studying nature. In this passage, Lao Tzu asks us to change the way we look at the concept of strength by noticing how the most solid and durable things in the natural world tend to be soft, gentle, and even weak. That's what I want to be. If we see strength as being hard, inflexible, and unyielding, he invites us to change that perception. Life, according to Lao Tzu, is defined as soft and pliable. I so agree with that. Some of my fondest memories of, this is him speaking, some of my fondest memories of my 8 children came from watching their flexible, newly born bodies in awe. I could lay them on my lap and easily place their feet in their mouths or even behind their necks. They were perfect yoga masters at the tender age of only a few months or even days. When they were toddlers, I watched in amazement, often holding my breath as they bumped their heads, ran into walls without looking, and took what appeared to be nasty falls. Yet, lo and behold, they'd shake it right off. What would have surely resulted in a broken hip or arm for an older person was hardly noticed by these limber youngsters. By the same token, an older tree that's getting close to death will become hard, brittle, and susceptible to fire and harsh winds. Since the tree can't bend, a strong gust can blow it right over. As it ages, the wood becomes weaker simply because it's inflexible. Its rigidity, which some think of as strength, has actually turned into a weak organism. Similarly, at the moment of death, all creatures go into rigor mortis, which is complete stiffness and, of course, a total absence of strength. Being pliable and able to bend goes beyond the aging process that all bodies are destined to experience. Thus, Lao Tzu encourages you to apply this principle to your thought processes and behaviors. You're reminded that rigidity and hardness accompany death, while pliability and even weakness are the companions of life. Total surrender. You may have been taught that strength is measured by how hard you are in your thinking or how inflexible you are in your opinions, and that weakness is associated with those who bend. But when confronted with any stressful situation, keep in mind that being stiff won't get you very far, whereas being flexible will carry you through. Change the way you think about strength, not just as it relates to those in positions of power, but for yourself as well. There's a lot to be said for what we're conditioned to think of as weak, like we were talking about. Begin to see that strength is weakness and weakness is strength. Just another of the Tao Te Ching's fascinating paradoxes. Here's what Lao Tzu encourages you to consider as you apply the lessons of this oft-quoted 76th verse. Be strong by bending. Be willing to be like palm trees in the midst of hurricane-force winds. Their so-called weakness somehow gives them the strength to survive devastating storms. The same is true for the way you relate to others. So listen more, allow your viewpoints to be challenged, and bend when necessary, knowing that you're actually choosing strength. The more you think in rigid ways, refraining from considering other points of view, the more you're liable to break. As Lao Tzu reminds you, the hard and stiff will be broken, while the soft and supple will prevail.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it is good stuff. So I was actually thinking about kind of what Kurt was saying about his parents wanting to control everything, and how do we bend towards people who are like that, who are just unbendable, and how we need to, I'm from experience, need to learn how to respond better to people who want and think they have control over everything. I know I don't, but I can't say to somebody, hey, you have no control over this situation, and it makes them crazy, insane.
For me, it's being flexible. It's flexibility in the response and tailoring the response to exactly who it is and what it is that you're being controlled. I have an issue with my husband. I've got lots of issues with my husband. But you know, one of the things is he does like to do things his way. You know, let me do it. And sometimes it's questioning and calling out other people's communication. It's differing the response because, you know, like my parents. So my parents, oh my God, my mother, she will never change. She will never change. She is one of these control, and her attitude will not bend. That's when, if you know that it's not going to change, then a boundary, flexible in your response to different people. Because if you know that somebody has that rigidity and will always have that control over you, then the best thing that you can do to survive, in inverted commas, is to have the courage and the strength to say, no, I'm not engaging with you in that way. For me, it's like the flexibility to kind of read each situation, being open to kind of responding in different ways, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it's us learning to be flexible with them. We're having to practice flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. That does make perfect sense.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thank you. Rob.
Yes, the other day, well, first off, I've been attending a lot of webinars, and recovery has been a huge part. So I'm at work on the clock. I'm actually at home on the clock, and I'm interacting with a guy, we'll just call him John, and he's doing this inflexible thing. And without even thinking, I'm doing the whole algebraic equation in my head. Well, he must be feeling fear, and it's probably because, you know, he's got so much change in his life. So I went through this whole thing without even thinking, John, you must be really feeling bad about this whole situation. Just completely, he would pause, because I wasn't like this before. It's kind of freeing, you know, and if they accept it, great. You know, I wasn't being condescending, and I was being serious. It's like, man, you know, it must be pretty tough what you're going through right now. And that completely leveled the playing field. It was like, he calmed down, and he wasn't mad at me. It was just, you know, work. It doesn't take much to find something to be mad about if you're really looking for it. So for me, it's pretty much running this thing in my own head. And then at that point, I'm good. And if people get crazy, well, you know, I can't control them either. I can pick out what clothes I'm going to wear. That's about it. That's about all the control I have. That's what I got.
And if I'm going somewhere with my wife, I've got to see what she's wearing so we don't match, right? What color does she have on so I can't wear that color?
Oh, when we got engaged or when we were dating, she picked out my clothes. We had to run around looking like twins.
Oh, God.
There's a picture I'll put up sometime, but not right now.
That's funny. But yeah, you know, it's just really learning our pieces in our powerlessness, is in our flexibility, in our meekness, in learning to be flexible no matter what's going on. That's what I get out of this one. And that's where life is. Any other comments, guys?
Hey,
Derek.
Hi. I had a couple thoughts. I had too many thoughts, actually, to try and share them all. But the most recent one is, I didn't know I could think this early in the morning. The most recent one was learning to ride a bike. When the gentleman before me was talking, I was thinking about that and in relation to what he said. And So I seem to remember now the difference that it made was when I was trying to control the bike. When I stiffed up and tried to, make it go the direction I wanted it to, obviously I would go right into the bushes. And this is a long time ago, but somehow I remember it now. I never would have thought about it. But I remember the key was the loosening of it, like letting it, like a controlled falling, if you will. And I've heard people describe walking as a controlled falling. And then I also was thinking about these songs you always hear that are like the most famous songs in the world sometimes, like I Did It My Way by Frank Sinatra, or there's a country one that I think it says, I have to stand for something or I'll fall for anything, and how the world, it's pretty easy to get, to listen to something like that. Like I've done that and gone, yeah, that's right. I stand for what I stand for, and feel like that's the right way to be, and that's pretty much what I got.
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, we want our opinions to be reinforced, right? Yeah. Oh gosh, look at that picture Rob put up. How old were you, Rob? Were you out of high school there?
I was 25.
You look 15, man.
I know.
Got the mullet happening. I noticed some mullet going on.
Hey, business in the front, party in the back.
And you're still married? That's good.
Yeah, 30 years this June or July.
Congratulations.
You survived the wardrobe days, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, dear.
Anything else, guys?
No, happy wife. Happy life.
Yes.
Don't forget that.
That is always true, Marla. That is always true. You're doing your meeting at noon Central. Is that right, Kirsty?
Yeah, that's right. Monday through Friday.
And what's the URL? That's an all for any recovery, right? For any addiction.
Yeah, it's all inclusive. www.dailyrecoverymeeting.com.
Okay.
Super easy.
Yeah. And then I've got, I'm doing a nightly AA meeting at 9 p.m. Eastern. Right now we're going through the steps. We'll be on the 10th step tonight, I think, the 10th step. And got some really good sobriety. I'll put the link in the chat for that. It's zoomaameetings.com, and then you've got a password for that. Password's the same as ID number. If you guys don't have nothing else, we'll call it a week. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars, and how to join the SRC and attend this meeting live. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with your friends in recovery.